True crime stories often reveal the darkest sides of humanity, showing us just how far some individuals will go when driven by obsession, desire, or cruelty. But some cases are so shocking, so horrifying, that they leave an indelible mark on all who hear them. This is one such case, the chilling story of a young woman whose life was tragically cut short at the hands of 6 men, each complicit in her brutal demise. This real-life crime will make your blood run cold as we dive into the harrowing details of her end. The victim, who was she? Her name was Sarah Thompson, a 28-year-old woman from a quiet town in southern England. Sarah was an outgoing, ambitious, and caring individual. She had recently moved to London, hoping to start a new chapter in her life. Sarah had always dreamed of working in fashion, and she had quickly become known for her warm smile and friendly personality. She had a small but tight-knit group of friends, a promising career ahead of her, and a bright future. But that all changed one fateful night in early 2017. The night of Sarah's death began like many others for her, a night out with friends at a local bar. However, this night would be the last she would ever spend with those who loved her. She was last seen around midnight, leaving the bar alone. It was a decision that would prove to be her undoing. The start of a terrifying chain of events. Sarah had been chatting with a man named James Devereaux, a 34-year-old man she had met at the bar that night. James was described by friends as charming and confident, but something about him set Sarah on edge. The pair had talked for a while, and Sarah had made it clear she wasn't interested in anything further. Yet James' advances grew more persistent, more aggressive. Around closing time, Sarah made the decision to leave the bar and head home. James followed her. Sarah, feeling uncomfortable, tried to shake him off by walking faster, but James remained close. That's when the situation took a horrifying turn. As Sarah attempted to walk down a dark alley near her apartment building, James grabbed her from behind. In a fit of rage, he violently overpowered her. But James wasn't acting alone. The truth would later come out. This was all part of a plan devised by a group of 6 men. The 6 men, the conspiracy unfolds. James was the first to strike, but he wasn't alone in his sinister intentions. The 6 men involved in Sarah's murder were part of an underground group that had been involved in a series of disturbing activities. Over the course of the investigation, police would uncover a web of connections that tied the 6 men together. They had all been acquainted with one another for years and had formed a tight-knit group united by their shared desire for control, manipulation, and cruelty. The men were as follows: James Devereaux, the one who had initially followed Sarah that night, a man with a history of abusive behavior, particularly towards women. Aaron Richards, a 30-year-old who had been friends with James for years. Aaron was known to have a volatile temper and had previously been involved in violent altercations. Darren Moore, another member of the group who had been in and out of prison for petty crimes, but had a dangerous reputation among those who knew him. Elliot Moore, Darren's younger brother, a 25-year-old who was easily influenced and had been known to follow his brother's lead. Keith Thompson, a 38-year-old man who worked in a local construction company. His friends described him as a quiet person, but he had a hidden dark side. Christopher Barnes, the oldest of the group at 42, a man with a history of violent crime who had recently been released from prison after serving time for assault. What made Sarah's murder particularly disturbing was the fact that the 6 men didn't just act on impulse. They had planned it for weeks. James had been the mastermind, but the others were complicit in her horrifying end. They had been monitoring her, tracking her movements, and learning her routines in the days leading up to that fateful night. It was evident that Sarah had become the object of their twisted obsession, the abduction and torture. After James first grabbed Sarah in the alley, he was joined by Aaron Richards, who had been waiting nearby. Together, they forced her into a van that had been parked just out of sight. Sarah fought back, but she was overpowered. The 2 men bound her hands and gagged her before dragging her to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of London. This was where the real horror would unfold. Upon arriving at the warehouse, they were joined by the other 4 men. The group of 6 took Sarah inside and proceeded to torment her. They tied her to a chair and began a sadistic game of control. For hours, Sarah was subjected to horrific abuse. The men took turns mocking, taunting, and physically assaulting her. They filmed the entire ordeal, showing no remorse for the terror they were inflicting. What was most chilling about the men's behavior was their apparent lack of fear. They believed they were untouchable, that they had orchestrated this crime so perfectly that no one would ever find out. They recorded Sarah's screams, her desperate pleas for help, and her eventual silence as she was beaten into unconsciousness. At no point did any of the men show any genuine concern for Sarah's well-being. Instead, they seemed to derive satisfaction from her suffering. The final hours, the death of Sarah Thompson. It wasn't until early the next morning that the group finally decided to end Sarah's life. They had tortured her for hours, but the pain they inflicted wasn't enough. They wanted more control, more suffering. In a final act of cruelty, the 6 men strangled Sarah to death. One by one, they took turns wrapping a cord around her neck, tightening it until her body went limp. It was a slow, agonizing death. The men left her lifeless body in the warehouse and fled the scene, convinced they had covered their tracks. But they had made one critical mistake. They hadn't realized that the warehouse was located near a security camera. The building was part of an industrial complex, and unbeknownst to them, the camera had captured everything. The van arriving, the men unloading Sarah, and even the time they spent inside. Though the footage didn't show the exact details of the murder, it provided enough evidence to link them to the crime. The police were able to track down the men based on the footage, their identities revealed in time to stop them from getting away with the crime. After weeks of interviews, forensic evidence, and more footage coming to light, the 6 men were arrested. Each one of them was charged with murder and kidnapping, and the trial that followed was a harrowing display of their cruelty. The trial and conviction. The trial was a media spectacle, with the public and press alike outraged by the brutality of Sarah's murder. The 6 men, when confronted with the evidence, showed little remorse. Their defense was weak, and the prosecution painted a chilling picture of their premeditated crime. The footage from the security camera played a pivotal role in securing their convictions. In the end, the 6 men were found guilty of murder, kidnapping, and torture. Each of them received life sentences, and the case became a stark reminder of the terrifying ways in which evil can manifest itself. For Sarah's family, there was no real sense of closure. Nothing could ever bring her back, but they took solace in knowing that her killers would never walk free again. The story of Sarah Thompson's murder is a haunting example of the horrors that can unfold when multiple people become complicit in a single act of violence. 6 men, bound by their shared cruelty, took the life of a young woman who had done nothing to deserve such a fate. Their actions, though carefully planned, were ultimately exposed by the very technology they underestimated, security cameras. While this case is one of unspeakable brutality, it is also a testament to the power of evidence and the persistence of law enforcement. The truth, no matter how dark, eventually comes to light, and justice, though slow, can prevail. This is the chilling true story of Sarah Thompson, whose life was tragically stolen, but whose memory lives on in the fight for justice. Thank you for watching this true crime documentary. If you were shocked and moved by Sarah's story, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue to share real-life stories of crime, justice, and the human spirit.